Welcome to the news and why it matters. I am Sara Gonzales, today joined by Stu Burguiere. We have a special guest, Johnathan Dunne, straight from Ireland.
Yes, ma'am.
So thank you so much for joining us. And you have a podcast on Blaze Network.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct?
Freedom's Disciple.
Freedom's Disciple.
Every Saturday at 12 noon Eastern.
Yes. So we're very happy to have you here. And then, you know, this guy.
I'm here.
Jason Buttrill. All right, Stu.
I mean, we got to start with the border, right?
Yes.
Today? Is that the way to go?
Yes. I don't think there's anything more important at this particular juncture. Johnathan, do you agree?
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to take a different tact. I'm going to talk about principle, which is rather shocking. Principle.
I'm not familiar with this term.
Yeah. You might need an English dictionary. But we're going to discuss the one thing no politician ever runs on, and they probably should. It's very important.
Okay. All right, Jason.
Border, doom and gloom. Let's have at it.
Well, I mean, Glenn's not here, so we appreciate you.
I'll fill in.
For that day. All right, lot to get into. Before we do that, want to thank our sponsor, Cosmo Hearst Kids. It's very simple. The society is in a giant decline morally, and our magazines reflect that, specifically Cosmo. You know, you go to the grocery store and you see the front cover, and you're just like, this is all pure garbage and also very awkward to see with your kids in line. So Victoria Hearst, who is a member of the Hearst family who owns Cosmopolitan magazine, has basically made it her mission to make sure that Cosmopolitan magazine, they fall under the same category as all of the other magazines that states that it's harmful to minors. Therefore, you know, your minor children cannot go to Walgreens and go buy Cosmopolitan magazine and start finding out all of these new tips and tricks to please your man. Yeah, we don't need our children reading that garbage, and Victoria wants to protect them. So go to CosmoHearstKids.com. You can learn more about this campaign. Again, she's not trying to stifle anyone's free speech, anything like that. She just wants to make sure that our children are protected from this trash. So CosmoHearstKids.com to learn more. So I'm going to let you start with the border and all that's gone on this morning. I know Trump had he delivered a message to America, and you guys, meanwhile, were going through the actual spending bill and looking at what's in it, which I know is unheard of, to actually look at what is in a bill.
Terrible idea. You never read the
I thought
bill.
you had to pass it to do that, no?
Oh, no? Okay.
No.
That's a great
That's what I
point.
heard
Pelosi
somewhere.
did say that.
That might actually be a better place to start before we even get to that. Just the bill, like this thing.
I mean, it all goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I think it's all together. Because, I mean, the reason why these things are tied together is because the supposed deal was Mitch McConnell will support the national emergency if Trump signs the spending bill and we don't get another shutdown. Everyone's very terrified of the shutdown, not do wonders for the polling numbers for Republicans, and so they're running away from it, which is, you know, some degree understandable. But it's really, this has been a disaster. Let's be honest about it. I mean, this has been you don't win them all, and this is a nice example of it. This is a lose-lose proposition. First of all, you have the bill. The bill is another version of an extreme spending bill that wastes money all over the place. If you remember, Trump, last time he signed one of these, said he would never sign another one. Here he is, signing another one. And this is not completely his fault, as the Congress, the terrible Congress, did a terrible job negotiating it. However, what we saw here, if you remember, was initially, when Republicans were in power, they were offered full border wall funding, which they rejected. Then they came back and said, well, here is $1.7 billion for the border wall, and Trump wanted 5.7. Now the shutdown happened. To show you who won the shutdown, they're now offering $1.3 billion for the bill. So they backed off from 25 to 1.7 to 1.3. That's one way of showing how you lose a negotiation. In addition to this, the Democrats are so confident in their political position here that they have, I think, taken extra steps to just basically try to humiliate Trump and the Republicans with the bill. The bill, for example, includes a stipulation that as of this bill, you cannot spend any tax dollars in arresting anyone who has anything to do with an underage alien. So now you might say, okay, well, kids, you know, a lot of times, you know, maybe you're not going to arrest kids that are aliens. That's a tough one. You can't deport them or arrest them. Tough issue. I understand it. And you might say, well, what about their moms? You can't go after their moms because their moms are taking care of the kids, and that's bad too. So to attempt to implement that and go much further, they say that you can now not use tax dollars to deport or arrest a underage illegal alien their caretakers, anyone who lives in the home with their caretakers, and any potential caretaker of an underage minor, and anyone who could potentially live in the home of an underage minor, which to me includes all people.
Literally everyone.
Like, it's literally anyone could potentially live in a home with someone.
So it's basically an amnesty clause.
It's a giant amnesty clause, and just that clause, I would not trade just that clause for the border wall.
Yeah.
Especially the fact that they're only getting about 2% of the border wall in the bill. They are thinking about doing another 8% of it in the national emergency declaration.
Can I
We'll stop there and we'll go through.
Well, no, I want to add on to that, but just some of the bad things in the bill, and this is very, very near and dear to me because I've been with some organizations like OUR that have went to stop child sex trafficking. And these are probably the worst people that you could ever think about, dream about, write about, make
Not
up.
OUR, you're saying the people that they're trying to
That OUR is investigating.
I was going to say, that's really calling
OUR is amazing. The people they're going after are horrible. So that's why I love having you around. For instance, really quickly, I went to a place in Southeast Asia where we actually did a meetup to try and figure out who these people were and if they really did have kids that were being trafficked. And these people would go to borders, and they would just back and forth across borders from other places like I can't say the country, but other countries where they don't regulate these things as much. They just take kids across the border. They take them by the hand. They take them by the truckload. They drug them. They do the most awful things to them. They give them or sell them to the most awful human beings you can imagine. Those are the types of people that are bringing over kids across the southern border. Now, now I'm just put in this picture in this bill. You can be one of those evil, vile human beings. You can take a kid and say, walk up to that border right there and just cross. So the kid walks across the border. Now, the same people that have been doing these horrible, awful things, drugging them and all this stuff, can literally just walk up to the kid and say, hey, I sponsor that person. Like, they're on their own, but I sponsor them. I got it. It's cool. I'm going to take care of them. Then hands off immediately.
You can't arrest them.
That's what this bill lets happen. Yeah. Now, I cannot imagine, the bill's about 1,200 pages long. So I know everyone didn't read it, but come on. If there's stuff like that in there, how do you sign your signature to that bill?
And it incentivizes child trafficking.
That's exactly what it does.
Yeah, I mean, it's really scary. You know, they say that between 30 and 40% of MS-13, the gang that kills people about 3 times the rate of all school shootings combined. This gang is about 30 to 40% of their arrests over the past few years have been technically underage alien children, unaccompanied children. So they would be at the level of, there's 16, 17-year-old gang members, they commit a murder. We could theoretically arrest them for murder. However, under this bill, that is in question at some level, but it's certainly in question on whether you could deport them. You could not detain them and deport them over immigration statuses. So, I mean, if an MS-13 member who's in MS-13, but you haven't caught him committing another crime, if they're underage or if they're a sponsor of an underage alien, you actually would not be able to kick them out of the country for those reasons. Yeah, that's insanity.
I heard the principle of it.
Yeah.
The principle, I've been trying to get here 15 years, so now this law says, guess what? If I find a kid or a kid I could live with, like technically by the wording that I've heard, and obviously it's open to legal interpretation. But if I say, hey, guess what? I'm going to live with them. I'm going to be a tenant. They're going to own the house, and they happen to have an illegal alien. Guess what? I live there. I'm now in. Awesome. That principle is up to grabs. The emotion of this issue needs to be taken away. There's one principle that needs to be answered, and no one ever discusses it or brings it up. Look at me as an example. Do I have a fundamental right to be an American? I'm sorry, as someone who's not an American, no. Right. I came here 2 days ago on a tourist visa. They could reject me. Would it be horrible? Sure. Is there any reason to reject me? No, because I'm in the public eye. I've been very clear about it. I'm the safest person to leave. I'm not going to bomb up a plane because there's evidence. But they have a right. If you guys decide, you know what, we don't want Johnathan in the country. Would it be hurtful? Yes. But there's no comeback for me. I do not have a right to be here. No one ever wants to talk about that.
And you've been trying for multiple years.
Yeah. 15.
Right? 15 years.
Yeah.
So now all you really have to do, instead of doing it legally, just fly to Mexico, walk up to the border, grab an unaccompanied minor, and you're good.
That's all you have to do. Just go move in with an illegal immigrant.
Exactly. Or just move in.
You're there.
That sounds ridiculous, but that's actually how this bill, what it lets happen. Yeah. That's insane.
And that's just part one of this, too.
But then you take, someone like me won't do it because I'm principled and I have honor, but you're giving incentive to people not to act in a good way. And is that what you want to do in a society? Do you want to be able to say, I get if you want to give the best intentions to the Democrats and the people, right, they say, okay, we want to make things easier. Let's just say they do, best intentions, they just are misguided. Do you want to incentivize people to do bad things? No.
Right.
That is not a society that your sponsors, Cosmo, Hearst kids. You don't want to be incentivizing, hey, this is an option for you. You don't want to be incentivizing men, women, or anyone else going, hey, I guess what, I'm this kid, now I'm in your country legally, and you can't touch me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. On that point, I want to bring in, I don't know, did you guys hear, I almost called him the wrong name. Robert Francis O'Rourke.
Bob Frank O'Rourke?
Bob Frank. Thank you. Thank you.
Certainly not Beto. Not Beto.
No, not Beto. And I forget that you are on a nickname basis with him.
Yeah, we're pretty tight.
Bob Frank.
That rumor's true?
Yeah, oh yeah. Totally.
Good old
It's
Bob
Friday night, so you're going to be like having beers later on tonight,
Believe the internet.
He was asked
There's never anything fake on it.
whether he believed that we should just tear down the wall, just make a referendum on the wall, tear down all of the barriers that we have now, and he said yes. He also made some interesting points. Let's watch.
Here's what we know. After the Secure Fence Act, we have built 600 miles of wall and fencing on a 2,000-mile border. What that has done is not in any demonstrable way made us safer. It's cost us tens of billions of dollars to build and to maintain, and it has pushed migrants and asylum seekers and refugees to the most inhospitable, the most hostile stretches of the U.S.-Mexico border, ensuring their suffering and death. More than 4,000 human beings, little kids, women, and children, have died. They're not in cages, they're not locked up, they're not separated, they're dead over the last 10 years as we have walled off their opportunity to legally petition for asylum, to cross in urban centers like El Paso, to be with family, to work jobs, to do what any human being should have a right to be able to do, what we would do if faced with the same circumstances they were.
See, so Johnathan, while you're saying I don't have a fundamental right to just be here, the left is actually saying the opposite. They're trying to spread the messaging that you do have a fundamental right to be here. And by the way, also making the argument for the wall at the same time, because he literally just said they can't get in where there's barriers, right. So they're going to the places where there aren't barriers.
Yeah.
Pretty sure that means that the wall works, but what do I know? It's just minor details.
Yeah, it's minor. But the frustrating thing for me is let's give him the benefit of the doubt that he has the best intentions, that he cares for people. Okay, well then, let's not make the wall isn't the issue then. If you're really thinking that there's a problem with the asylum process, fix the asylum process. Right. Get more judges. You have embassies. There's an asylum process. You go to your local embassy. I don't know whether I wouldn't support the funding of taxpayer money, but let's say you do, and you're open with how you spend money. Then set up advertising campaigns. If you have a situation that you're in danger, you fear for your life, or you want, whatever the criteria is, even if you want to make it even more lax to get an asylum process, then say this is what you do, but you go through a process. Yeah. This idea that, hey, I've got this situation. I could have applied for asylum. For the last 7 years, I couldn't get a full-time job. I struggled to put food on the table. Why? In part, because of what I say. It isn't popular where I come from. So I could have claimed for asylum, just turned up at the border. I do not have that right. As much as I may say America might owe me, it owes me nothing, but people say it, or I'm entitled, it doesn't. You are not entitled to be here. And if you get here, you should be thankful.
Mm-hmm. The easiest place to cross the border for an asylum claim is the major border crossings where you can walk up to. You don't have to go around anything for that to happen.
You don't have to sneak across.
Yeah. However, this is why, and what Robert Francis O'Rourke talked about there is the reason I support the Secure Slide Act. And what it entails is a giant escalator that goes very, very high in Mexico City. And then you just get a slide that just comes over and it lands, somewhere in Arizona. And people can just slide all the way down. We want to make it easier. Using your legs, I think, is too much to ask.
That's a great point.
So the Secure Slide Act, they're going to be proposing it in Congress soon.
The left never cared about, he doesn't care about the welfare of the immigrants. The left still doesn't care about it. They care about one thing. In fact, I think it was actually, wasn't it Woodrow Wilson that actually began the process of limiting immigration around 1915-ish or something like that? The left never cared about it until they built the welfare state. That's when they started caring about it. Because once they built the welfare state, they knew that a massive amounts of immigrants, they could come in and actually rely on the welfare state. Then they would be beholden to voting for the party that wanted to maintain and make that welfare state larger. That's when they started caring about it.
Yeah.
But
let's get into the national emergency and all of that next. There's so much on it.
What do you know, Jonathan, about the immigration system?
I know, I've only been studying it, trying to find the way there.
A lot more to get into, but before we do that, I want to thank our sponsor, Rydia Zone. So I probably don't have to tell a lot of you. You've probably already heard this before, but I used to be pretty fat. Yeah, there's just no way around it. People get mad at me. Viewers get mad at me because they're like, "You shouldn't call yourself that," and I'm like, "I don't know what else to call it." I mean, I was large and in charge.
How'd you get younger from that picture? That's interesting.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Wow, just made my day. But Rydia Zone has.
Oh, you're not the girl on the right?
Oh my God.
Sorry,
You're killing me. All right. Rydia Zone has helped me. It can help you. It helps me maintain, but it helps you lose weight if you've hit that weight loss wall or you've, as Jason just pointed out, reached my age where your metabolism just crash and burns and you can't do anything to lose the extra weight. Try Rydia Zone. It's the good molecule in olive oil that they put into a capsule that helps boost your metabolism, help you feel full, so it reduces your appetite. Just need like that extra boost. Try it, see if it works for you. It works for me. Go to rydiazone.com, enter promo code TheBlaze, and get 30% off of a 3-month supply. That's like $1.39 a day. Jason should probably try some immediately. I was just thinking, he looks like he's gained some weight. So.
Yikes.
I was going to say, buddy, you're piling it on there. You need to do something.
You're welcome.
You're going to hit me all show now.
All right. So we, in talking about the bill and what a disaster it is, and, I heard you guys, Stu, you and Glenn, urging everyone just blow up the White House phone boards and email and all of that. Let them know not to go through with signing this bill. But let's talk about the national emergency that he declared.
Yeah, again, they're separate. So if you think the national emergency for the border is necessary, you could oppose the bill,
right.
And vice versa, I guess, too. I think the national emergency is a very bad idea for many, many reasons. I think, Jonathan's brought us back to principle several times in the show, which I think is important. And the principle here...
You keep saying this word, and I don't know. What is it?
I think it's Irish. I don't know.
Yeah, the Irish have the ownership of principles, right?
The idea of a president being able to redirect funds against something that Congress has come out, Congress has the power of the purse, they have come out and they have said, we do not want to spend money on this. Mm-hmm. The fact that the president can just overrule that with a national emergency is, on principle, wrong.
And Bill O'Reilly, building off that point this morning when he was talking to you guys, said, no, it's the bill's okay because the national emergency supersedes the bill. And he was saying that like that was a good thing.
Yeah,
no, that's not a good thing.
Again, it's only a good thing. Bill at one point, and we kind of called him out on this a little bit, just in a somewhat fun way, but he said, well, I'm thinking long term. I'm thinking Trump's reelection. Well, Trump's reelection isn't long-term. That's 2 years from now. It's less than 2 years from now. He may or may not win. That may be important to you. It may not. But the bottom line is, this is a fundamental part of our government. And it goes back way before Trump. It goes back to Obama, who basically, not through the National Emergency Act, but a different process, put DACA through after he himself said he couldn't do it unless he got Congress to go along, did it anyway. So of course that emboldens Trump to do it a little bit here. But go back to Carter when they passed the National Emergency Act. It's a terrible idea. The power of the purse specifically lies with Congress, with the House. The House has to be responsible for this. And what the House and Congress did was like, well, we'll vote to give that responsibility to the president. Well, you can make an argument in a very short term. Okay, maybe it is 6 months where like they have a little bit of time in case something happens, we can't get a vote on it. But within that 6 months, Congress has to approve that action. The way the act was designed was they could say, the president says there's a national emergency, it then goes to Congress, and Congress has an opportunity to say he's BSing, it's not really an emergency. Again, I think there is a real problem on the border. I'm not talking about the motivation here. But the bill got overturned in the Supreme Court partially. So instead of it being something where the Congress could say, no, that's not an emergency, they have to say, no, that's not an emergency, and then send it to the same president who just said it was an emergency, and then he gets an opportunity to veto it. So it winds up being almost impossible to overturn one of these things. And in my mind, when the Supreme Court made that distinction, they should have thrown the entire law out. We saw this with Obamacare, where it went to the Supreme Court, and one of the arguments was, if we get rid of the individual mandate, does this make the entire law so ineffectual that we just have to get rid of the entire thing? That should have happened with the National Emergencies Act. Beyond that, I would be completely pleased if they just got rid of it totally. just to a point where, you know what, if we got to get Congress to vote on something in a couple days, that's fine. Yeah. We don't need to have the president to be able to move money around when he's not constitutionally allowed to do it.
I want to point out that the huge conundrum here is that we all agree, I think, most of the people on the right agree that there's an emergency on the border. We all pretty much agree with that. Would everyone at the table pretty much agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing one that's been going on for multiple decades. Really.
Yeah, there's a crisis. You could name it as an emergency.
The New York Times called it a crisis.
Yeah. Right.
So, I mean.
So then you would think that, well, yeah, the national emergency, declare it. Now, if we're talking about principle, every single person that identifies as conservative should be against this. They should be against the National Emergency Act. They should be against declaring this as a national emergency. Our jobs as conservatives should be to advocate for lesser government. We don't want a president or a figurehead in the government that has more power. And that's exactly what this does. This supersedes what, every time they want to get something done that Congress will not do, they're like, screw it, national emergency, I'm doing it anyway. That's not American. That's not what the founders intended for. That's not what we should be enabling. What's hilarious is if you look at how many current national emergencies there are. I counted 28. Some people I've been reading lately have been saying it's over 30. Yeah. We don't even know. We don't even know how many national emergencies.
That should be much easier to find out.
Right? And so it's somewhere between 25 and 35. But that's ridiculous. And my point is that these things, power is bipartisan. Once you get power, it doesn't matter what it is. You're going to vote every 6 months, which is how the system operates, to keep it. Obama did this 13 times. I don't even remember that happening, but he did it 13 times. There's still 11 of those still in effect today.
Most of them, however, were completely non-controversial. They were things like limiting, no, I'm serious, they were things like limiting Iran's ability to move funds around, stuff like that.
But why not have Congress handle that?
I'm totally with you.
Yeah.
That's what's controversial with this one, is that he's using this power in a completely new way, and the Democrats will love that.
So two things, and this is where you need to get back to principles, the Constitution. If you are on the fence of, I like this, but I'm not sure if it's constitutional. I've seen so many constitutional arguments for this. There's 7 words that make this unconstitutional. All powers should be vested in Congress. Mm-hmm. Simple. And the idea, the problem that I see as an outsider is you've got so far from your history that you don't teach it. People are like, well, but Congress sucks, John. Okay, great. Then change them. You know, this idea that you have to have everything now. You need to read your founders and understand that the reason they had the Senate, there's a reason they are elected every 6 years. Because your founders, when they read around the history of the world, they read about Plato's Republic, about the Roman Senate, they said, you know what? History shows there's some things like a wave election. We don't want to have a system of government that we can have a wave election every 2 years and do something that's really bad long term. Mm-hmm. We have the House is elected every 2 years so that you can have the wave election. But you also have the Senate that if you do have that wave election and are potentially on the course to do something that's really popular today but long term isn't a good idea, that you have senators who are not up for re-election for another 4 or 5 years that go, no, let's just calm down. Mm-hmm. Let's just slow this process down. Let's discuss things. And no matter how frustrated you get, you have to understand there's a constitutional. You have to separate your emotions on whether you like it, whether you agree with the policy and whether the outcome. Look, the wall should be built. There's absolutely no doubt. There's no logical reason I've seen why it shouldn't. But just because you want a wall doesn't mean you go, well, we're going to get it. The ends do not justify the means. And that is a question everyone has to ask themselves. Do you want something? Yes. Okay. What are you willing to do for it? Are you willing to forgo your honor, your principles, and what you stand for to get that little victory? Because here's the thing. History shows, and let's make this about the Republicans and the Democrats, who will abuse power worse? The Republicans are bad. But they're amateurs compared to the Democrats. Mm-hmm. And when you have John Kerry openly, not in hidden circles, openly saying, we want them to do this because guess what? When we get power, climate change, baby.
Mm-hmm. Amen. All right, back in a minute.
The only way to defeat a law is to secure a slide act. Basically.
Johnathan, tell everyone really quickly again where they can find you.
Sure. So on Twitter, I'm Freedom Disciple. Facebook, Johnathan Dunne 58. You can get my podcast anywhere it's free. SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Play Music.
Freedom
Stitcher.
Disciple is the name
Freedom
of it.
Disciple.
No, we mean like weird immigrant. Where can we find you? We're coming after you.
Oh, okay. Dublin, Ireland.
And then those of you who have not yet done so, go to blazetv.com. Sign up. Use promo code NEWS. You can get $10 off of your annual subscription. Quite a deal for the number of voices that we have on there. blazetv.com, and Overtime is up next.
So why does it take